Hi, and welcome to this episode of Future Identity Now. I'm Laura Camperson, I'm the Future Identity Portfolio Lead, and I'm delighted today to be joined in studio by Mike Kiely, Sales Director for Financial Services at IDnow. Hi Mike, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come in and chat to us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure. Pleasure is ours. Lovely to meet you. In this interview series, we really focus on the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of digital identity as we speak. So we'll definitely get into some of your views on all the exciting things that are happening at the moment. But before that, Mike, could I just ask you to introduce yourself and just to tell us about IDnow?
So as you said, Mike Kiely, I'm the Director for Financial Services Global for IDnow. We're a identity service provider and we provide KYC, AML solutions into the financial services marketplace. We were established in Munich in 2014 to service the German marketplace for organisations that need to be regulated by BaFin in the German marketplace. And recently we bought an organisation called Next in France, and they're the market leaders for identity service provision in France as well. And so we've got a unique combination because we've got the French marketplace covered off, we've got the German marketplace covered off, and in terms of regulation, they're typically two of the most difficult markets to get into in Europe. And so we can deliver that through a single platform into the market. So any organisations who are looking to consolidate, we're an attractive proposition from that point of view to reduce the number of vendors that they're working with, or organisations that are looking to get into Europe, then again, attractive proposition because we're working with two of the strongest economies in the single market.
Yeah, and as you say, two of the hardest sort of compliance-wise and the strictest regulations. So to have cracked that, that's really interesting. Thank you for that introduction. And financial services is one really key part of where digital identity is being applied. It's a rapidly evolving sector. I know that IDnow looks across several different verticals, including gaming, telecoms, travel, and there's healthcare where digital identity is being applied. But your role, Mike, specifically looks at financial services. So I'm interested, what is kind of unique about the role that identity plays in that sector, and what are some of the unique challenges faced by financial institutions and the ways that they have to take an approach to identity proofing?
Yeah, I'd say that when you're looking at the other sectors that you mentioned there, I'd say that from a financial services point of view, financial services is a must-have.
Yeah.
The other, gaming, travel, nice to have. And what I mean by that is when you think about financial services in the UK and any developed country really, you've got to have a bank account in the first place in order to get your salary paid in. There are very few organisations in the UK that will pay you cash, so you've got to have your bank account set up, and then you're setting up your direct debits and you build up your credit, and so you get access to all other financial services products at a competitive rate. Whereas in the UK there are around about 7 million people who can't get access to financial services products for all sorts of reasons, whether they're new to country or they've got a bad credit rating, or not even the wrong documentation. They haven't got the right documentation to get access. And so as a result of that, those people are paying a premium for any kind of services that they want. So for example, even if they're looking to buy energy, they're having to feed a meter, so they're paying a premium for gas and electricity. If they want to get a loan, typically they need to get a subprime loan, so they're going to pay a higher rate in terms of the repayments that they're making. So it's that's a big issue. Financial services is seen as a driver for social inclusion. And so the UK government and financial services sector are kind of working on a solution to that, which is digital identity. So it's really important that we give people access to the financial services market, and we make it as easy as possible, but we make it as secure as possible. We did a survey recently just to try and get a feel for what makes the consumers tick in the UK. And 2/3 of the people said that having a good digital proposition is really important when they're looking at choosing what bank they want to work with, what they want to bank with, I beg your pardon. And then I think it was 47% of the respondents said that they're frustrated with traditional banks. And the fact that it's inconvenient to have to go down to a bank in working hours and take all your documentation if you want to open an account. But then in terms of just under 50% said they were concerned with digital fraud. So they were concerned that they could be compromised from an identity fraud point of view or cybercrime. So you've got that balance of making financial services easy to access for the population in the UK, but also from a point of view of providing better services, digital services to the population, but also from a social inclusion point of view. But also on top of that, you've got to make it as secure as possible. You've got to make sure that consumers don't think that they're going to be compromised in any way.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating that inclusion aspect of that. I think that the two things kind of go hand in hand, as you say, because there's a desire and a demand clearly in the market to have access to digital services, but without some form of digital identity or way of proving your identity digitally, you are then vulnerable to those security risks, or perhaps might not be able to get access to those platforms, which then feeds back into the exclusion as well. So lots of fascinating different pools there for reasons why it's so critical, I think, in financial services, as you say, and being an enabler then to all those other sectors. Absolutely. That's really, really interesting, and interesting to hear a little bit as well. You started to touch on some of the real benefits of digital identity and enabling that inclusion. We talk a lot about the pressure to go digital, and things like eKYC and identity proofing being almost a necessity of that a business sort of is then forced to look at how they can adopt. But what about seeing it as an opportunity? I wonder, what are some of the ways that eKYC can actually outperform traditional KYC?
I'd say a number of different areas.
Yes.
So convenience, security, speed, customer experience, conversion. I'd say all of those areas, eKYC can outperform traditional. And if you just took convenience, for example, not having to go into a branch and take all your documents with you, making an appointment, taking time out of your day to do that when you get there. If you haven't got all the right documentation, you've got to go back and get the right documentation, and you've got to go through that whole process, and it can be quite a cumbersome process. Whereas with digital, you can kind of go to the financial services organisation's app, download the app, just capture an image of your document, do a selfie, fill out the information that's required, and the speed and convenience is just far away, outstrips the
it's sort of, rather than going to it, it almost comes to you where you are in a way. And I'd imagine that benefit is then reflected for the institution as well, because obviously that takes a lot of time out of for the business and for workers in checking those documents manually. So that's
absolutely.
Cutting.
And from a customer experience point of view, conversion point of view, and then you've got kind of security as well from a digital point of view. Again, if you consider the traditional way, if you take your documentation into somebody in a branch, you hand over your passport, that person's got to determine is that a real passport? Have I seen a 2002 issued passport? What should it look like? What sort of security features should it have? So, there are resources they can get online to look at, do comparisons with the documentation. but they're not forensic experts in documentation, so being able to make that decision, it can be quite, I suppose, open to fraud. And then you've got kind of that person sitting in front of you with that document. You can have a passport or a driver's license for up to 10 years. Is that the same person? You can change quite a lot over that period of time.
I'm due to get a new passport. Mine expires actually in April, and I definitely do not look like the photo on it anymore. So
it's amazing. That person's got to make that decision. People can lose hair, they can grow facial hair, makeup, glasses, all that type of thing. People can look very, very different to the image on the document. But when you consider the digital approach, using technology, using kind of AI and machine learning, then once you capture the image of your document, then the technology will classify that document. It knows exactly what to look for in terms of the security features on the document. So it does all of that kind of hard work for you, and it's a lot more robust than a human just sitting there and having a look at the document. And then when you think about the face match, we've got biometrics. So facial biometrics is just looking at certain kind of landmarks on the face. It's not just looking at the face and saying, does that look the same? It's landmarks that don't change over a period of time. And so you can get a very high degree of accuracy. Does that face match the image in the portrait image in the document? And so all of that kind of thrown in. And then there's lots of other stuff that you can put on top in terms of layers. If you've got a biometric document, you can extract the data from the chip. We can determine if the chip has got the right certificates, it hasn't been compromised. We can compare the information from the chip with the information in the document. And then you can even do things like, and also check the portrait image from the chip matches the image on the document and the person's face. And then you can do things like holograms. Does that hologram perform as a hologram should perform on a 2002 document kind of thing for that particular issue of that nation.
So it's a level of accuracy far beyond what can be achieved with
it's just so much more robust. So you've got all of that. You've got the speed, you've got the convenience, you've got the security, and then, like I said, the just customer experience, and just gives you a much better conversion.
Yeah, so I suppose in order to unlock all of those benefits, financial institutions need these methods of KYC to be compliant with the regulations that they're still sort of bound by. So I think that there's been, I would say, quite a huge amount of progress in that area. We're starting to see acceptance of digital onboarding in a lot of regulation in a lot of ways. But what do you think are some of the next steps that are needed to ensure that financial institutions can fully embrace eKYC moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty huge question, and I think there is a panel at the event. And
yes, your colleague Frank will be on a panel about that, so I think we can discuss that in more detail. I don't want to steal
his thunder, but there have been some interesting developments. I mean, when you think about it in the UK marketplace, there have been lots and lots of new vendors from an eKYC point of view in the UK marketplace in the last 2 years. And they bring with them a lot of kind of different levels of quality and capability. And so when you think of a financial institution, if they're looking to choose a vendor that they can partner with, it's quite difficult to go through the marketplace and decide who you're going to partner with.
And who they can trust.
And who they can trust, exactly. And so it can be a bit of a challenge for those organisations to decide which vendor they're going to work with. And so one of the recent developments, the UK government has introduced it's called the UK Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework. And that's something that's been put in by the government to try and set the rules and standards around a number of different areas. So things like data security and risk, around interoperability, inclusion, and a whole number of different areas that it looks at. And the idea is that identity service providers will have to go through a certification process So a very rigorous certification process against all these different areas that's kind of underpinned by UCAS, which is a government body, and so that they'll have to be certified throughout that process. And the benefit of that, or the good thing that comes out of that, is that you know, if an organisation is looking for a vendor, then at least they'll know that if they've been through that process and they're certified, then they're a pretty good vendor to choose, and that gives them more confidence. It gives the consumers more confidence because they can be kind of happy that their identity is going to be secure. And then also in terms of that process at the moment is only available for right to work and right to rent in the UK. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the financial services sector looks at that and whether they will adopt a similar sort of process for their own services, because I think if you've got that kind of trust framework in place, it just makes it easy in terms of choosing vendors, and it just gives consumers a bit more confidence in the security around.
So confidence to the financial institutions, confidence for the consumers as well, and then hopefully leading to greater adoption if it's something similar is rolled out across financial services.
Absolutely, and confidence that the solutions that are being used have been rigorously tested.
No, absolutely. Well, as you say, your colleague Frank will be joining us on a panel at the Future Identity Festival. That's on the 14th and 15th of November this year. So I'm sure we'll talk about all of this in much more detail at the event. But for now, thank you so much for joining me, Mike. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and we look forward to seeing you at the festival.
Yeah, lovely to meet you, Laura. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.